gentlemen, let's get started today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lecture 9 for CS2040S, hashing. Okay, so part 1, part 2 is tomorrow, today's part 1. So here's where you are in CS2040S right now. We are right before recess week and we are talking about hashing and hash tables. So you've covered quite a bit of material already on the way here, alright? And so we'll cover lots more throughout the semester. So you know that we've graded quiz 1. If any of you have issues with your quizzes, please come see me after the lecture, okay? And then talk to me, it's okay. There's been a concern raised about problem 3C, where a few students have misinterpreted the question, and then when I read it again, I was like, okay, there's a little bit of ambiguity here. So the ambiguity related to whether it was asking for the average time complexity of the partition function or the partition function in quicksort. Alright? So if you have misinterpreted the question, please come in and see me. Okay? And then we can address your score. Your grade should be up on Luminous by Friday. It's very important that you check your grade. Right? In case we have some data entry problems, then you want to catch that early. Alright? So let us know if your grades don't match what you have in the paper. Okay? Alright, so let's take a look at your marks distribution. It's a little bit bimodal, right? You can see there's like 2 humps. If you're on this side of the distribution, great job, you're doing well, keep it up, okay? If you're around 45 to 55, you're getting a good score, but there's room for improvement, okay? So my goal is really to push everybody towards the right side of that distribution. If you're getting anything less than a 45, you need some hard work. Alright, in order to do well in the course. Okay, so part of the quiz, why we have the quiz so early on, is to actually give us some feedback about the parts that you're having trouble with, and then we'll try to improve upon the delivery. Okay, here's some distribution across the problems. Problem 1, actually, the majority of people are getting problem 1 good, but there's still a sizable number that are not doing so well. Okay, and we will address that in the next slide. Problem 2 seemed to be the killer. It was intended to be a relatively straightforward question, but came out to be more difficult than I envisaged. I think that means that we have to work a little bit harder on trying to relate how you can solve problems. Okay? And problem 3 was done a little bit better, yet there were some issues about the analysis, I think, which was problematic. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Right, so you guys all know the solutions by now. We've attended the tutorial, right? All the solutions were covered, so you know perhaps what were the deficiencies, and so maybe perhaps where to improve on your current scores. So as I mentioned, we'll try our best to help you do well in the course. Believe it or not, I don't get points for knocking people down. I actually want all of you to get A's or A pluses in the class if possible. All right. So some of you think that maybe it's a curve. Essentially, if everybody gets above 90% in this class, I'm happy to give everyone A's, right? I don't care about whether the university says it's wrong, but essentially, if everyone does well in the course, why should you not all get A's, right? It doesn't make sense to me to grade you down otherwise. However, no matter how many times I try to do that, the distribution somehow emerges every year. But I'm going to try this year to push everybody as many as possible to do well in the course, okay? Without decreasing the difficulty. Okay. Alright, so we're going to have, yesterday there was a remedial for the recurrence relations. It was an embedded systems lab. Today there's a second class because some people couldn't make it for the first class, and it's at SR5. Okay, so keep in mind the venue change. Okay, and there is also going to be a remedial for quiz 2, right? For preparing for quiz 2, and that's going to be during recess week. All these remedials are optional. I encourage you to go, however, if you feel as though you're not confident solving any of the problems during the quiz, or if your grade is, for example, within the work harder range, right? I strongly encourage you to attend the remedial sessions. Okay, there are going to be the TAs are going to handle these remedial sessions. So as you know, quiz 2 is after recess week. It's going to be Tuesday, not Monday. Tuesday. Alright. So it's going to be Tuesday during lecture. Again, it's going to be open book quiz. It's going to look very, very similar to quiz 1. Okay? There might be some questions which are a little bit different, of course, but you have 3 questions and multi-part. Okay, there's going to be a true or false question. There's going to be some some problem-solving questions. Okay, not too different from quiz 1. There's no electronic equipment as usual, and we'll cover everything up to PBSTs. Okay, no hashing. So today's lecture and tomorrow's lecture, they're out of quiz 2. Right, but everything up to last week will be there. Any questions about remedial, marks, quizzes, exams? No? Okay, so let's jump straight into lecture. The material. Today we're going to learn about the symbol table ADT. We're going to be describing the hash table data structure. You're going to learn what that is. We're going to look at the performance of the hash table, both worst case as well as average case. And then we'll be describing the differences between chaining and open addressing. There are two kind of different policies for working hash tables. So we'll be learning about these things. Hash tables are maybe one of the most, important data structures that you're going to be studying throughout CS2040S and also for the foreseeable future. They are very, very useful, I must say. I use them a lot in my previous work, and I think you will too. Unlike maybe the balanced binary search tree, so ABL trees, you may never need to code up a rotation ever in your life, okay? Because you just use the standard libraries. But hashing tables, you may have to code one up in the future, maybe. All right. It's very important that you kind of know where you can go wrong. Hash tables have these very nice performance guarantees, but only if you get it right. If you get it wrong, hash tables can perform very poorly, and we'll see some of that today. Okay. All right. So let's start with a problem. We always start with a problem. So in this case, the fictional Singapore police want some help. They want to quickly look through a database of criminals based on their fingerprints. Okay. The three criteria for them is that the lookup should be very, very fast. Okay. They want like a constant time kind of performance, or better than organic possible. Okay. And the question is, can you help them design an ADT and then the data structure to help you to do this? Okay, so let's start with designing an ADT for this problem. So what kind of operations do you think are necessary for this? So let's think about possible operations. All right. So if somebody tells you I want a database, what kind of operations do you kind of need for the database? So we've done some before. What do you want to do when you have a database ADT, let's say? Sorry? Get. So get what? Get some key, right? Okay, so maybe you can, he said get, so maybe get based on some key, okay? Or maybe that's one operation that you need. Well, to get something, you assume that something's already in the database, but when you boot it up, maybe there's no criminals. In Singapore, there are no criminals, right? So imagine as though you need to, so we imported one, and let's say we have to put him inside. What do you need? Yeah, okay, you need to insert, right? Maybe some key. And value pen, key value pen, right? What else? Search. So search is like get, I guess. So maybe I'll just do search here. Okay. Key. Right. What else? Remove. Okay. So remove or delete. Remove by key. Oops. Okay. Let's say. And you can come up with other things. One other thing might be size, right? So you want to know how many criminals are there in Singapore, right? This will tell you what it is. Okay, so this is an example of some of the operations that might be useful. These operations come under the dictionary ADT. Okay, so there's insert element with a value and a key. We discussed before. Search, delete, contains, size. Okay, so these are also called symbol tables. They're also called dictionaries. Okay, or symbol tables. Tim Garden says this, I kind of agree, that this term dictionary can be somewhat misleading because it makes you think that things are ordered in like alphabetical or increasing order in this dictionary, in this ADT. It's not really the case, right? And we'll see why later. So remember last week we talked about the ordered dictionary ADT, right? And the ordered dictionary ADT, there are a couple of operations here which are not in the dictionary ADT. What are the two operations that appear here which are not in the previous slide? Can you see? Okay, floor and ceiling, right? So floor and ceiling appear here, but they're not in the dictionary ADT. So let's look at this, and this will come up again. But let's talk about how maybe we can implement this efficiently. Okay. So there are various data structures that we can use to implement the dictionary. All right. One is to use an unordered array or linked list. Okay. Then your insertions are very fast. but your search times are very slow. Okay, they're very slow because it's an ordered array, right? So you search through everything. You can make it ordered, right? Then your insert time becomes quite expensive because you have to find the right place to put the element. But your search time becomes very fast because you can use binary search. Great, you can use binary search. Alternatively, you can say, I'm going to use my balanced binary search tree. That's what I learned last week. Let's say an AVL or a red-black tree. And then you have an average insert time of log n and an average search time of also log n, which is quite nice. We know log n is actually very, very fast. Today we're going to study about a hash table. An hash table gives you average insert time, average search time of O1. It's like magic, right? Constant time lookup, constant time insert. But then some of you might be saying, wait, that's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that you can do something in constant time for insertion and search. Because that means that maybe you can do sorting in faster than n log n. Alright? In fact, maybe you can do it O(n). What you do is you say, okay, give me the biggest element, and give me the second biggest element, and if each of these searches just take O1 time, then you can get the entire thing in sorted order. Right? But we also know, I've told you before, that the fastest you can actually sort something, okay, using order comparison is n log n. Okay? This should be sort. Okay, sort something. Let me change that. Sort. More precise. Using order comparisons n log n, right? You can't do better than n log n. If somebody tells you you can do better using order comparisons, then there are something's wrong. Okay? So this should tell you something. What's the conclusion you can draw here? So the conclusion you can draw is that a hash table actually doesn't work using order comparisons. So remember in BBSTs, when you were going down the tree, you had to check, right, whether this is bigger or smaller than, and then you find the appropriate place in the tree. Same with if you insert into an ordered array, then you need to find out whether something's bigger and smaller than. Those are order-based comparisons. Hash tables don't work like that. Okay, they don't work like that. So how do they actually work? We'll learn about that today. You will have to pay. Okay, so there's nothing's free, as you know. There's no free lunch. Okay, there's no free lunch. The fact that you have great insert time and great search time, you kind of pay for that because you can't really do order-based operations very quickly. If you want to search for max or min or do floor ceiling, then you need to search through the entire array. That's going to cost you a linear time search. Okay, so that's expensive. So there's no free lunch. You know, you get some web operation very fast, but you're going to pay for that in some way or another. Okay, so again, you can't really do these. Can't solve the previous problem very efficiently with a standard hash table. Okay, you need something. You still need BBSTs. You can't just use hash tables all the way. Right? Okay, hash tables have a lot of applications, as I mentioned before. It's one of those data structures that people use again and again and again. You can use it for like actual dictionary, for spell checker or autocorrect. So you know autocorrect when you type in something, then tries to correct your English, but very often it gets it wrong. You can use phone book, internet. DNS, the Singapore ID database, that the police one that we're looking at now. Your compiler uses it as well. Whenever you declare a variable, for example, it creates a hash table to know where it is. Okay, so compilers use it as well as many other kinds of applications. Okay, hash tables are very widely used. So how do we implement the hash table? So that's going to be the core crux of today's lecture. Okay, so what is a very straightforward way to implement a hash table? Let's say you do nothing about all the upcoming content. What's the most straightforward way? The most straightforward way is to, let's say, just have a table, a giant array. Okay, you can think of a giant array in your computer, and every object you have an integer key for it. Okay, you just give it a number. And every time you get a new object, you look at the number and you put it in this array. Okay, index by its index. Okay, by its number. That's easy. This is definitely O1 insert, right? You just look up the index and then you put it there. And O1 search, you just look at where the cell is. Okay, what's in the cell. That's all you need to do. Very fast. This is awesome, but not really. Okay, so what's the problem? What's the problem with this particular approach? The big problem is that it takes up too much space, right? If all integers are possible, what's the size? Let's imagine you're on a 64-bit machine. What's the size of an array, right? Just to have the addresses. Right? What is that size? How many possible integers are there that you can represent in a 64-bit machine? 64 times 1. That's a lot of memory. Okay, that's a lot of memory. That's too much memory for us just to store this hash table. Okay, so that's not great. What if your keys are not integers? This is another problem, right? Maybe your key is a string like this, right? Or maybe it's a floating point number, a real number like this. Okay, so maybe it's not so straightforward. Problem 2 I think is a little bit easier. Problem 2 is a little bit easier. Pythagoras, everybody here knows Pythagoras. You know Pythagoras theorem, right? Like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Everybody knows that theorem from high school, right? So Pythagoras, this is the School of Athens. It's a mural in the Vatican. It shows some of the greatest minds of antiquity, right? So Pythagoras is sitting here. That's Pythagoras. This is Plato. This is Aristotle. Okay. If you go to the Vatican, you can see this, and you can read about it on Wikipedia if you wish. So Pythagoras said everything is a number, and that is especially true in a computer. Right? In a computer, really, everything is a number, and it's a particular number, it's a binary number. Right? Everything is in a computer is bits. It's actually 1 zeros. Everything in a computer is like that. Okay? So if you were to store, let's say, in English into a computer, right? You have 26 letters, 5 bits per letter. The longest word is anti-de-establishmentarianism, okay, whatever, it's 28 letters, and so, that takes about 140 bits. Okay, so we can store any possible English word in a direct access array of 2 to the power of 140. Okay, unfortunately, 140 is like the number of atoms on Earth. Again, way too large. Okay, way too large. You cannot possibly do this realistically on a machine today. Okay, so. Here's the insight. The insight is that really the universe of possible keys is very, very large. It's huge, right? The universe of all possible keys. But the truth of the matter, like English, not all words, not all permutations of letters are valid words. There are only about 200,000 real English words, right? Likewise, the space of actual keys may not be so large. The space of actual keys may actually be n, right? Some smaller number than the size of the universe of possible keys, right? So I want you to pay attention to the difference between the number of possible keys as well as the number of actual keys, all right? And these two are not the same, okay? So the question now is maybe we don't have to have an array the size of the universe of all possible keys. We just need it to be some factor of the number of actual keys that can crop up, okay, during our use. Okay? So the way we're going to do this is we're going to map keys, okay, the space of actual keys, into buckets. Right? You can think of buckets, you can think of this like an array. Okay? But we're going to call each cell a bucket. Okay? And we'll see why you call it a bucket in a second. We're going to define something called a hash function. Okay? What's a hash function? A hash function takes in a key from this universe of keys and maps it to some integer value from 0 to n minus 1. So you have n buckets, it maps one particular key to one of these buckets, essentially. Okay, it says, okay, give me a key, the hash function will say, okay, go to that bucket. Okay, go to this bucket, or go to this bucket, right? It tells you which bucket to go to. Okay, and the buckets all have particular numbers attached to them, from 0 all the way to n minus 1. Okay, so that's the idea. We are going to store a key in bucket hk, right? The hash function, that's h, okay, of the hash function applied to key k. And the time complexity for doing this is the time to compute the hash and also the time to access the bucket. Alright? If we're going to assume for the remainder of today's lecture and also tomorrow that the hash is very easy to compute. It's fast to compute. It's O1. Okay, constant time. This is not strictly true in practice, however. Okay, so for example, if you have a string, maybe you have to examine each character of the string, so you need to see the length of the string. Right? So, but for today at least, we're going to assume that it just takes constant time. O1. Okay, O1 time. Alright. Let's look at an example. Precise example how this works. So imagine that I have this bunch of keys, and this is K1, K2, and K3. Okay, these 3 keys. What I do is I just apply the hash function to the key. So I want to insert key 1 with the value A. Okay, so I apply the hash to K1, right, whatever that might be, and that gives me 2, let's say. So I'm going to put this into the second bucket, okay, bucket number 2. Okay, bucket number 2. If I need to insert K2B, I repeat the same, do the same thing again, right? I just apply the hash right, to K2. This gives me 8, and then I'm going to put this value, key value pair in bucket number 8. Right. So now let's say I insert K3. But something odd happens. So I apply the hash to K3, and the hash for K3 is also 2. It's also 2. In this case, this is what we call a collision. Alright? A collision happens when two distinct keys, so two keys which are not the same, K1 is not equal to K3, alright? They're not the same key, but they map to this exact same bucket. Alright, this can happen, right? Because it's a hash function, may map to the same bucket. Alright, in this case we have a collision. So let's just assume that we have a very large universe of possible keys, okay? But we don't know what the keys are in advance. Okay, we also don't know what the keys are in advance. The table size is smaller than the universe size and also the number of actual keys. The question is this: do you think that it's possible to derive a hashing function that has no collisions? Alright, so we'll do this quickly, alright, because we'll discuss it. But do you think it's possible, just intuitively, do you think it's possible to derive a hashing function that has no collisions? And try to draw on your knowledge from previous courses in order to answer this. Okay? So, let me do a poll. So how many people think yes, it is possible? How many people think one? How many people think it's possible? Great soul. Okay. B. Sometimes, if you're really, really careful. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6. Alright. Nah. Lots of people say, oh, okay, more people say nah. Okay, so the right answer is nah. Okay, you can't. So why can't you do this? Why is this not possible, right? It's something that you actually learned in 1231, right? Which is the pigeonhole principle, which says that, look, if the number of buckets is smaller than the number of keys, then there's going to be one bucket where there's going to be more than one key, right? Very intuitive. You have 10 pigeons in 9 holes. You can see that there's a pigeon hiding, extra pigeon here hiding in this hole, right? So you can't do this, okay? It's not possible. And you guys have actually proven, I'm pretty sure you guys have proven this yourselves in 1231, right? The pigeonhole principle comes back and says, look, you can't do this. This is not possible to do. So let's see whether this lesson has really permeated your consciousness. Here's a question: are there 2 people in Singapore with exactly the same number of hairs on their head? We exclude bald people because bald people have no hair. Then of course yes, but we exclude them. Okay, we exclude them. So how many people think that yes, there are people with the same number of hairs? Okay, quite a number. How many people think maybe? Let's count. Okay, let's count. How many no way? This cannot happen. There's no way. There's so many hairs. How many people? No? Okay, 1 or 2 more. Alright. Yes, by the pigeonhole principle again, right? There are about 4.5, or more than this now. There are about 4.55 million, let's say, people in Singapore. The average human hair only has about 100 head has only about 150,000 hairs. Okay? By virtue of the pigeonhole principle, not pigeonhole principle, you're going to have this case, all right? That 2 people will have the same amount of hair. Okay, so let's go deeper. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's add some assumptions in so and do some math. Okay, this class will be a bit math heavy. So assume that we have n keys and m approximately equals to n buckets. Okay, and we assume further that the keys are uniformly distributed. Okay, they're uniformly distributed. So what is the probability of a collision in this case? Okay, so to answer this question, we're going to look at an old problem that you've probably seen before. Okay, you've probably seen before. It's called the birthday paradox or the birthday problem. It's not really a paradox. Let's say we are hashing people by their birthdays. Assume uniform. Okay, so every day is likely. This is not true in general. Okay, certain days are more likely than others in the real distribution. Your parents get busy at certain times of the year. Okay, but assume uniform for now. Now, how many people do you think must be in a room? So how many people are the keys? People are the keys. Okay, must be in a room, a hash table, before the probability of 2 people sharing a birthday becomes at least 50%. Okay, so you can calculate this. I want you to try to calculate this. Try to remember what you studied before and try to calculate this. I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, it's not very hard. It's the number 12, 23, 111, 1,100, or maybe some even larger. Okay, so I'll give you 2 minutes. Try and calculate it. This is actually possible to calculate. Okay, and if you intuit the answer, make sure you know how it's derived. So if you can't remember how to compute this, think about the situation, convert situation, where what situation must happen for everybody to have a unique birthday, right? Imagine one of the 365 days. What is that probability that everybody in the room has a different birthday? Right? And then you can take the complement of that. Give about 20 seconds. We'll look at the answer. Okay, time's up. Let's take a look what people are saying. Oh wow, okay, so 12 people have computed the answer, and they've said 23. Okay, they've said 23 as the answer. No one has picked any of the other digits. Let's have a look. Okay, and the right answer, of course, is 23. 23 is quite small, right? How many people are in this room? I think more than 60 right now. Okay, and so why is it so small? Why is it 23? So let's define this probability, Qn. Such that everyone in this room, where everyone is, the count of everyone is n, all right, has a unique birthday. Then what is this probability? Well, the probability is just that one person has this birthday, and then the next person, right, has to have some birthday which is different, right? And out of those 365 days, you have 364 possible choices for that. The next person has one less choice, so 363 out of 365. He goes all the way down up to 365 minus n plus 1. Okay, so that's the idea, right? So we need to multiply all these together. And the probability of two people, at least two people sharing the third birthday, is just 1 minus Qm. That's it, right? It's 1 minus probability that everybody has a unique birthday. And if you do that, you find that P23, right, is about 0.507, a little bit more than half. Okay? This is what the graph looks like. So the probability of the pair grows very rapidly actually with the number of people in this. So like a room this size, you would expect that if uniformly distributed birthdays, that two of you actually share the same birthday, right? So I think most of you have seen this in 1, 2, 3, 1 before. So collisions are actually a fact of life. You can't really escape it if you don't know the keys in advance. If you actually know all the keys in advance, and it's not insanely large, then you can derive a perfect hash. You can Google a gperf, and then you see how to do a perfect hash. Okay, but in our class we're not gonna look at that. All right, we're gonna have to deal with collisions because we don't know the keys in advance, and so we're going to develop a policy for handling collisions. What do you do when a collision happens? All right, there are two possible things that we're going to look at, and tomorrow maybe we'll look at one more. Okay, so the first is called chaining or separate chaining. And the second is called open addressing. Let's start with chaining first. Okay, so if I call it separate chaining or chaining, I mean the same thing. Right? Okay, so the chaining idea is extremely simple, like super simple. Okay, here it is. Each bucket, you don't just store one element, you can store a linked list of elements. Okay, so whenever there's a collision, it's very simple. I'm just going to add it to the linked list. Right? Super simple. So let's say I insert K1A, it goes there as before. Insert K2B goes to 8. I said before, and insert K3C. Again, this maps to bucket 2. Alright, it maps to bucket 2. This is a collision, but it's okay because I can just add it to my linked list. And then if you assume that, for example, you only have head pointer, you can add it to the front. If you assume you have head and tail pointer, you can add it at the back or front, up to you. Okay? Just add it somewhere. Alright. So this is easy to do. Right? You just maintain a linked list. So here's a good question, right? So what is the worst case space complexity for a hash table with separate chaining? Imagine as though you have m equals to your table size and n is the number of potential keys. Alright, so I want you to try to answer this on Poll Everywhere, because I think it's useful to try to derive what's the potential size of it. So when you're doing this, please keep in mind like what how many elements in the worst case goes into the nucleus. But don't forget that you maintain this table as well. So is it OM, ON, OMN, OM plus N, or EI? Though this one I think maybe. Alright, so this shouldn't take too long, but discuss with your friend and try to figure out how much space, alright, not time, space complexity this will need. Okay, so I'll leave this up. You guys entering your results as soon as you've discovered it. I'll give you a minute, just 1 minute. Okay, time's up. Let's look at this. So, alright. So, majority of you have listed OM plus N, right, on the order of M plus N. There are some who have picked ON, and then a few more have picked OMN, and then a smaller number have picked OM. Okay, so let's look at the solution. So the right answer is OM plus N. So why OM plus N? Okay, why is that the case? Well, because you need to, number one, N, I think everybody knows, right? N is because the worst case you have filled up this part, right? So you have N elements already stuffed into this hash table. Okay, so that takes up N space, right? But you've got to remember that your hash table also takes up space. This is like references to potential linked lists, right? So that also takes up space. And so you have to keep in mind that this will take up M space. Okay? So you have M plus N space for this, in the worst case, for hash tables with separate chain. Okay? Alright, so now let's look at inserts. Alright, so how long do you think an insert takes? So we're going to say that this is time now, how long it takes in the worst case. We have M table size and the number of potential keys, and assume that your hash only is constant time operation. Okay, the hash only takes constant amount of time. Let's fill this in very quickly. Okay, what do you think it takes? OM, ON, O1, or OM plus N. Okay, so quickly put it in. Let's see how. Think about it carefully, right? What could happen in this case? All right. Okay. Wait till about 20. Say that we're at the 20 and people start at 19. Is that fine? Okay, 20. All right. So let me see. We're about a neck-to-neck race, slightly with ON and O1, like constant or linear, right? And so let's have a look. Right, let's have a look. The right answer is O1, right? So why does it take O1? What does insert do? What does insert do? What do you do when you do insert? We've done several examples. Right? What's the first step? You hash your key. How long does it take? O1. Okay. Next, you go to the bucket, right? And then you insert it into that linked list. You can insert it if you have only a head pointer. You insert it where? The head, right? That's in front. If you have head and tail, you can insert it in the front or in the back. How long does it take? O1. Okay, great. So that will take in total. O1, great. Okay, so that's how you break down the operation. That's how you reason on it. Okay, so this will take O1 time. Now let's talk about search. Alright, so now I want to search for a particular key. Alright, if I want to search for a particular key, how long will it take? Again, imagine that hashing only takes constant time. Okay, hashing only takes constant time. So let's quickly put this in. Again, do the same thing. break down the operations, okay? Think about how long the things can take if you break down the operations, okay? So think about, oh, what am I going to do first? I'm going to hash first, okay? Hash to a particular bucket, and then what do you do next, right? And try to reason out before just before putting an answer, okay? So let's look. I'll wait till about 20 again. Okay. Using separate chaining. Separate chaining. 17 now. Couple more. 18, 19, 20. Okay. So majority of you are putting ON. There are few people who are taking O1, constant time, and OM. Alright. So let's break this down. Let's break this down and think about the operations that we need. So when you first hash it, how long does it take? O1, great. Now I go and look in this bucket. Right? Now, what can be in the bucket? The bucket is a linked list. Okay? How long does it take to search in a linked list in the worst case? O1? ON, right? It takes ON. So in total, it can take ON time. The worst case scenario is that all the keys have mapped to just one bucket. And then you have to search through the entire list of all the N items, okay, to find the key that you want. Okay, so that's the worst case scenario. Right? So again, when you're thinking about these things, break it down, right? And try to piece together what's the total time from breaking down the different components. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to, you notice that the worst case time is ON, right? And I said before that, hey, you know what, hash tables are O1, but I did say average case, okay? So we're going to make some assumptions. The first assumption is this, the principal assumption is called what we call a simple uniform hashing assumption, SUHA for short. It's an optimistic assumption. What it says is this, every key is equally likely to map to every bucket. Okay, so you give me a key and there's an equal chance of any bucket being the right one. Okay. 2, the keys are mapped independently. Alright, so you give me key 1 and key 2, they're mapped independently to their respective buckets. Alright, they don't rely on each other. Okay, so the key idea is that the intuition is that each key is going to put into some random bucket. Alright, and as long as there are enough buckets, then there are not going to be too many keys in any one bucket. Right? So they'll be spread kind of evenly across all the buckets. And then if we have enough buckets, then the size will be small. Okay, so we don't have to search so much. That's the idea. Okay, so under the simple uniform hashing assumption, we have m buckets, n items, and we're going to assume that n is some factor of m. And this alpha here, this factor, is called the load factor. Alright, it's going to be a load factor. And we're also going to assume that m is going to be bigger or equal to n. So the number of buckets you have is actually larger than the number of actual keys that will go into the hash table. Okay? So the expected search time is going to be 1, right, which is hashing plus array access, plus the number of time it takes to do your linked list traversal. Okay? So these two components you add up together, which you hash, and then you say, okay, the worst case time is how many items there are in the bucket, right? So in the worst case before, we saw that it was ON, right? But everything to the same bucket. In this case, we're going to make this assumption, right? We're going to make this assumption, and so we're going to consider the average case, right? So what is the average search time under SUHA, right? So let's again break it down. Think about how big is a particular linked list or a particular bucket going to be. How many elements are going to map inside? Okay, and if you figure out the answer, be more precise, right? Try to derive or prove for your answer. Okay, I'm just going to wait till 20. So put in your answer. I'll give you, let's say, maximum of a minute. Okay, and if you know the answer, right, try to write proof for it. Right? Try to prove it to yourself that is the correct answer. seconds left. Okay, great. So let's look at what people have put in. Most of you have selected O1. 70% of the respondents have put O1. A few of you have put ON, right? And some of you have said that we thought we do some fingerprint stuff. That's also true. Okay, so let's look at the one answers. So the intuition is that, remember from before, is that under Suha, we want the expected size of the buckets to be small. Okay, and if it's small, then we can do searching very quickly. And it turns out that it's going to be about constant, right? So why? Why? It's going to be O1. Why is that the case? So I'll give you a proof sketch, okay? Our proof sketch relies on indicator random variables, more precisely binary indicator random variables. How many of you have seen indicator variables before in previous classes? 1, 2, 3, 1. You guys know of Bernoulli distribution? Coin flips? Everybody did coin flips, right? So you flip a coin, it come out either heads or tails, right? So in this case, we're going to say it's either 1 or 0, right? 1 for heads, 0 for tails, let's say. Okay? Now, for coins, what's the problem? For a fair coin, what's the probability that it comes out heads or tails? Right? But you can have biased coins, and then it will be a certain probability, right? That it will be heads or tails. Okay, so we're going to have like coin flips here as well. Okay, that's going to be represented by x. Okay, that's our random variable. Our binary random variable is called x. Okay, now xij, right, takes in two parameters, is 1 if item I is in bucket j. Okay, if item I is in bucket j, then this random variable takes a value of 1. It's 0 otherwise. Okay, that means if item I map to a different bucket, it's going to be 0. Okay, so it's just going to be 1 only in this particular situation if I map to bucket j. So what we want to do is to compute the expected number of items in a particular bucket. Okay, because remember that's what we said we were interested in, right? We want to know how many items there are in a particular bucket because that's going to affect our search time. Okay, so we're going to compute that. This E represents expectation. Okay, we're just computing the expectation of the sum of all of these random variables because that's going to give us the number of items in a particular bucket. Okay, we're going to sum over all possible items I. Okay, now, because of the linearity of expectations, we can just push the expectation into the sum, right? Which yields this, the following right-hand side equation. And then now we just define the expectation of x. We define the expectation of x. Now you already know this actually from your coin flips, right? So what's the probability? Let's say the probability of getting a hit is p. What's the expectation? The probability is p then. What is it? So let's look. The expectation of let's say x equals to let's say p success, right? In this success, let's call this success, let's say, and this fail. Okay, so p success times 1, the value x, right? In that case, plus p fail times 0. Okay, so this is going to be equals to, okay, that's it. So the probability that you actually map, right, to a particular bucket is 1 over m. There are n buckets, so this is probably you map to the particular bucket. It's 1 over m, right? And you sum n times, right, I to n. So that's going to give you n over m, and that's equivalent to your load factor. Right? That's equivalent to your load factor because your load factor is defined like so. Okay? So you just manipulate it, you get this, right? Okay. So it just depends on your load factor. That's the point of the thing. And because your load factor, because m is bigger than n, right? Your load factor is going to be less than 1. So this is going to be constant time operation. Okay? So you're safe, right? You're safe. Okay. So that's for your search time, right? This is extra. So this is a slightly different question. This is, what is the expected maximum number of elements in a bucket? Previously it was just the average across all possible buckets. But let's just say I look at all my buckets and I pick the biggest one. Alright, pick the biggest one. After I randomly distribute my keys, what is the largest? Okay, which one is the largest? How big is it? Alright? So the analogy is I take n balls, I throw it in the air, right, into the n buckets, right, and see which bucket has the largest number of balls, and I count them. So what order is that on? Is it an OM, ON, O1, O log n, or Y? You make no sense. Okay, so how many, this is extra, okay, this is extra. So how many people think it's on the order of M? N, for O1? Log n. Okay, no sense? Okay. Alright, the right answer is log n. Alright, and there's a paper on this. It's called Balls into Bins, a simple and tight analysis, and you can read about it if you were interested. Okay, just Google Balls into Bins and you'll find this. But essentially, it also means that the maximum search time is also quite low. It's log n. Okay, the maximum search time is also bounded by log n, so that's quite nice. Alright. Okay, so in the previous analysis, in the previous slides, I use linked lists. You might ask, hey, why can't you use linked lists? Can't you use something else? Why don't you use like the array? Or maybe we learned about, what other data structures can you use? What do you think? Yeah, what other data structure? What data structure did you learn last week? A heap? Okay, can you possibly use a heap? But if you're doing searching, how long does searching take in the heap? ON, right? Maximum is good. Maybe you want to search for maximum. What other things give you fast searching? ABL trees, right? Balanced binary search tree. So you could use balanced binary search tree like ABL or red black tree. You can improve the worst case bounds in that case, right? Because you know that searching in the ABL tree is log n, right? So that's quite nice. Improve worst case bounds. But unfortunately, this is not really. They don't really use this very much in practice. Why? Is because there's a lot more overhead. And if the number of elements is small, then it's really not justifiable to use that much overhead. Usually this is sufficient, okay, for most of the applications. So if you have a small number of elements, don't really bother to use ABL in a hash table, right? It's really expensive, so you may want to. There are some situations where that is necessary, but in general, if you have a small number of items, a relatively large hash table, you can use linked list. Okay, so I talked about separate chaining. Let's move on to open addressing. Open addressing is slightly more complicated. Okay, the setup is slightly more complicated. So pay close attention in the next, let's say, 30 minutes or so. Okay. So the key idea on open addressing is this: when you collide, you keep probing until you find an empty slot. Okay. So what do you mean by probe? Okay, what do you mean by probing? So the key, let me give you an example, and then we'll make it clear. So let's just say I do h5 equal. I want to insert h5. Let's say. I first compute the hash, right? Compute the hash, and it gives me 2. Immediately I see, I look at bucket 2, there's K1 inside, alright? In this open addressing, there's no linked list, okay? There's no linked list, okay? Every bucket just has one item, okay? I look there and I say, there's something inside, I can't insert it there. If I insert it there, it means I have to delete K1, which I don't want to do, okay? So what can I do in this case? So I'm going to probe using something called linear probing to start. So in linear probing, I'm just going to go one by one after the bucket I hashed to, alright? And I'm going to check. Okay, I'm going to get 3 next. 3. 3 is also full. Let's go 4. 4 is also full. Go to 5. 5 is empty. 5 is empty. I'm going to put my key in 5. Alright? So I start off, I hash to 2. And I say, it's full. I'm going to search forward until I find an empty spot, and I'm going to stuff K5 inside. Alright, that's basically the strategy I'm going to employ. So this is going to be the index formula. What it's saying is that HK, the hash, gives me my base address, okay, where I start. Where I start is given by the hashing function, and then I'm just going to increase the step size, increment one by one, okay, until I find a particular empty cell. Now, why do I need the mod m here? What's the mod m for? Wrapping around, that's right, wrapping around. Once I get to the end, if I keep going more, I'm going to get an error, right? You're going to get an error. So you want to loop around, so that's why this mod m is there. So most of you will know modular arithmetic already, but let's do a quick revision of modular arithmetic. So most of you will know A divided by B. Let's say A and B are this quotient, right? A, B, let's say are integers. All right. You will get some Q, right, with a remainder R. Right. So most of you know this already, right? You take A divided by B, you get some Q quotient plus some remainder. Now, if you use the modular operator, you basically don't care about the quotient. I only want to care about the remainder. Okay, so A modulus B, then I get my R. Okay, that's the idea. So you use this all the time when you read your clock. Okay, and you like do some 15 hours in the future and so on and so forth. Okay, you do this all the time. So for example, 48 mod 12 is 0, right? It's 2 days into the future, it's 0, right? Not 4, 0. Okay. So you check if it's divisible, right? Essentially this 48 is divisible by 12, so you're gonna get 0. 27 mod 12? 3. 3, thank you, 3, okay. 8 mod 4? 0. 7 mod 2? 1, thank you. Okay, so everybody knows modular arithmetic, alright? So that's fantastic, let's move on. So search is going to be similar to an insert. Okay, we're just going to probe until we find a key match. Alright? So in this case, right, let's just say I'm looking for K5, right? I'm looking for K5. I check my base address is 2. I look here, it's not K1, don't match. Look the next one, K3, don't match. K4, don't match. K5, found. Okay, found. And I stop there. Okay, I found it. Alright, when do I stop? When should I stop? There's a natural place for me to stop. Let's say I'm looking for K6. Okay, K6 also maps to 2. Where do I stop? So I hash K6, I get 2, base address 2. I look at 2, no, this is K1, no, this is K3, no, this is K4, no, this is K5. I stop when I hit a null. The moment I hit a null, I can stop already. I say, look, it's not added there, it cannot be anywhere in my hash table, so I'm going to stop. Okay? So delete is also easy, right? We just do a search until we find the element and then we delete it. So imagine I delete K5. Okay, I delete K5, I get a base address of 2, I keep linear probing forwards until I find it, and then I just delete it and put a null there. Okay, put a null there. This is wrong. This is wrong. Don't ever do this. Why is this wrong? What's wrong? The element is not inside, fine, you won't find it and then you don't need to delete. But I'm saying that deleting it this way is wrong. What happens?
Search will have problems.
Search will have a problem. Fantastic. Okay. So let's try this. Let's delete K3, alright, and search for K5. Alright? So what will happen when I delete K3? I put a null there, and then I search for K5. Remember the base address of K5 is 2. I look at 2, keys don't match, I stop at my null. That's not good. K5 is definitely in the array. It's in the hash table, but I didn't find it. Okay, because this is the wrong way to do a deletion. The right way to do a deletion is to use a special symbol. We call it DL. Alright? We use a special symbol and the search continues even when we see a DL. Only when we see a null, then we stop. Okay? When we see a DL, we still continue on. So that's what we're going to do. Alright? So again, look again. If I delete first K3, I put a DL. K5 back to 2. I start linear probing, 2, no, 3, DL, continue, K4, K5, I found my match. Okay, so very straightforward, we're just going to hack it by putting a DL symbol there instead of a null. Okay, everything's fine. Inserts, just overwrite the DL. Okay, if you need to insert where you have a DL, just overwrite it, it's fine. Okay, so there's an example. So one key problem with linear probing are clusters. Okay, primary clusters in fact. They are a collection of consecutively occupied slots. So in this example, A is one cluster and B is another cluster. Okay? So with linear probing, let's just do a hand poll here. What do you think? Do you think that big clusters and small clusters are likely to form? Will you have like a giant cluster and like maybe one or two small clusters? Or will you have a collection of very small clusters? So what do you think? What do you think will happen more often? So how many people think big clusters are likely to form? Okay. How many people think small clusters are likely to form? No, one. Okay. How many people think the size actually matters? One. Okay. Big clusters are likely to form. Why? Why big clusters? So look at this hash table, right? Consider two clusters, one of size 5 and one of size 2, right? What is the probability that the newly inserted key has a bucket in cluster A? So when you do your hashing, it goes to cluster A. What's the probability of that? So there are 5, cluster A is already 5 cells big. What's the probability of that? Assume uniform, you have equal likely chance of mapping to every bucket. Okay? 5 over 10, right? 5 over 10, right? Because they're equally likely. Cluster B, 2 over 10. You're more likely to hit bucket A, right? There's a cluster A. And then once that happens, cluster A is going to grow. Alright? So the moment you have one cluster is bigger than the other, it's going to get, it's like the rich get richer phenomenon. Right? So because they've already occupied one, they're more likely to get hit and then they grow again. And more likely to hit and then they grow again. Okay? So big clusters are likely to form when you're dealing with linear probing. So that's I think just what I wanted to say that it's identical to no, it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to jump to why clusters matter. So I'm not going to prove this because it takes too long, but I just want to bring it about. Okay, there is I posted extra reading material that goes into the somewhat into the derivation of this. You can also find the derivation or discussion of derivation in Sedgwick and Wayne's textbook. Okay, but this is how the average number of linear probes, okay, is affected by the load factor. Okay, so depending on the load factor, you're going to get a different number of probes for whether your hit was successful or not. Okay, so when you're inserting something, it's akin to a search miss, right? Because essentially you have to search through an entire cluster, then put it inside by one, right? So the cost is the same as a search miss. Okay, so successful search, unsuccessful search. This is if this formula is hard to parse right away, you can visualize what it looks like. It looks something like this. Okay, and these are some numbers to match. Okay, as you can see, as your load factor increases from let's say a quarter, at a quarter you only need like on average maybe 1 to 1.4 probes, right? As you increase that, you see that to let's say 9 over 10, where load factor is 9 over 10, you need a heck of a lot more probes, right, for unsuccessful search. That's not good because of the primary clustering effect. Okay, it's not easy to do this analysis, but if you're interested, please do read it. Okay, it looks something like that, right? So performance definitely degrades. All right, with your load factor. So something to keep in mind. Like I said, implement these hash tables. It's great when it's working very well, you get your O1 performance, but not in this case, right? If your load factor is high. So let's think about possible ideas. One is to probe differently. The other is to maintain a low load factor, right? Make sure your load factor is low, and then you get this nice performance here, right? If your load factor is low. So let's look at probing differently. So one other way of probing is called quadratic hashing. Quadratic probing. So instead of taking one step at a time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square my step. Right? I'm going to square my step. So here's an example. Let's make it very concrete. This is my example. Let's say my base address is 3. Okay, my base address is 3, and the size of the hash table is 7. At step 0, I'm going to check the base address. Right? At step 1, I'm going to add 1, which is 1 squared. Alright? That's going to be 4. I'm always going to modulus 7. Okay? Let's say something's inside. I go to step 2, which is 2 squared. Alright, step 2 squared, which is 4. Then that's going to be 0. Right? Step 3, and then 3 squared modulus 7. That's going to be 5. Okay, it's very straightforward. All I'm doing is I'm squaring my step. Okay, I'm squaring my step. So the big question you have is, okay, great, I can do that, but is that a good probing method? So you can avoid the primary clustering problem, but you have another problem, which is called secondary clustering. Right? It's a milder form of the primary clustering problem. Because if two keys have the same probe position, their probe sequences are identical. Right? Because look at this part. It doesn't depend on the hash. Right? Once you hash to a particular location, if two keys hash to the same position, their next probe sequences are going to be identical. What follows after that is going to be the same for both keys. Okay? Even the keys are different. So what will happen is that you have clustering around different points. Rather again, the main big cluster, you're clustering around different points. Okay, so you have smaller but still problematic clusters. So here's a question: how many probe cluster sequences can there be for this? How many probe sequences? M. Good. Why M? Why M? Why M? How many buckets are there? M, right? So HK gives me something in the range of n, right? From 0 to m. So, and I said that once you know your base address, your sequence is fixed, right? So there can only be m probe sequences. Okay, once you get to that base address, the sequence is already preordained. Okay, nothing will change that. Okay, so there's another big problem. I'm going to show it on Visual Go because I think Visual Go has a nice illustration of this. Forgot to set this up just now. It's okay. Hashing. So how many people already have seen this? You guys do your homework? Homework? Nobody did their homework. Very bad. Okay, so let's have a look at quadratic probing. I think it's this one. Okay, so let's try insert 1217. Okay, so it's gonna do this. It went by very quickly. All right, went by very quickly. Let's take it a step at a time. Okay, so I'm going to slow this down, but I'm going to slow it down on my slides. Okay, because I think it's slightly easier when I slow it down on my slides. So what's going on in that particular case? First, we took hash 17, which is 17 mod 7 is 3. That's already occupied by key 10. Okay, so I need to keep going. Right? It's already occupied, I need to keep going. I'm going to do 3 plus 1 squared mod 7, that's 4. It's occupied by 18. Okay, that's no good. Let me go 2 squared. Okay, and I already did the math, so it's 35. It goes to 0, occupied by 35. And then 3 squared, okay, that's going to give me 5. I look at 5, oh, 3. Then I go 4 squared, that's 5 again. Okay, that's going to be occupied for sure. 7 zeros, that's again occupied by 35. 4, 18, 3, 10. We're stuck. Essentially, we're stuck in an infinite loop. Alright? So the problem with quadratic hashing is that you have this infinite problem. It doesn't hit all the buckets. Notice that there are empty spaces. I just can't get to them. Okay? I can't get to them with quadratic hashing, quadratic probing. Okay? There is a way to address this issue, right? Essentially, if my load factor is half or less, right, and m is prime, then I can always find an empty slot with quadratic hashing. But I have to make sure that my load factor is at least half, okay? Is below half, okay? So I'll give you a proof sketch. This proof is by contradiction, okay? And we're going to set up 2 probe locations, all right? So 2 probe locations. And the 2 probe locations are the base address plus x squared and the base address plus y squared, all right? Where x is, without loss of duality, x is smaller than y, okay? And they're both going to be smaller than m over 2 because my load factor is less than 9. Okay, so it's going to be less than m over 2. Now I'm going to assume that the locations are the same, all right, but x is not the same as y. Okay, so the step size is different. We take a different step, but they map to the same location. All right, that's my assumption. I'm going to show that this leads to a particular contradiction. Okay. So I'm going to do some algebraic manipulation, nothing major, right? They are both the same, right? But x is now equals to y. So I can get rid of the hash, the base address, right? So x squared equals to y squared. I'm going to push the y squared to the other side. And after this, what can I do? This is a quadratic equation. I can factorize it. Okay, I factorize it. Once you factorize it, you get this. Okay, so let's think about this a little bit. This is saying that x minus y times x plus y is divisible by m. 0 means it's divisible by m. We saw it just now, 48, 12, 0, right? Okay, so this is divisible by n, all right? This is a problem. Why is this a problem? This is a problem because m is prime, okay? And both of them, because m is prime, and both of them, right, have to be less than m. Both of them, x minus y and x plus y, must be less than m because they are both less than m over 2. Okay? It must be the case then that they cannot be divisible by m. Right? Nothing up to m is divisible by m, right? M is prime. Okay? So that's the case, so you have a contradiction. So what I can do, what does this say? This says that I need to pick m to be prime, and I need to pick my load factor to be half or less. And then I'm going to have this nice property that I can hit all the buckets. Okay, that's going to be why this is practical. But it does require my table to be less than half full. Alright. Okay, there's another hashing method, right? This is called double hashing. Double hashing, in the previous quadratic hashing case, we saw that once you found your base address, then your sequence is kind of set, right? It's fixed. But maybe I can use a second hashing function in order to fix this. Alright? So I'm going to avoid secondary sequencing by providing more unique probing sequences. Alright. Here's a question. How many unique indexing sequences does double hashing provide? Let's quickly answer this on Poll Everywhere. I want you to think about this carefully, right? So what was this is the formula. The formula is the first hash provides the base address. Okay? The second hash provides what you can think of as a probe sequence. Okay? And then you multiply the second address by the step size. Okay, so it's going to provide something like a step size, if you will, for this probe sequence. Okay. So up to how many unique sequences does this provide? So let's have a look at the first set. Yeah. So the winner is now I love math, it makes people cry. But let's see whether we can get a good different answers. So, okay, more people are loving math. 16, I'll wait till 20. So some is which I race between these two other than I love math. 19. 2 more. Okay, so I'll log the results for now. Alright, so a lot of you have said m, smaller number have said m squared, even larger portion of you said you look, that doesn't make people cry. Let's look at the answer. Let's think about this. How many ways can you map here? I said it just now. How many pockets are there? M. Okay, that's m, right? So how many ways here do you think? M. Okay. So for every base address, how many possible ways extra that you can sequence? M. So it's m times m, which is m squared. Okay, so it's m squared. Okay, HK provides a good random base address, and H2K, H1K provides the random. Your first hash gives you your random base address. Your second hash gives you a random sequence. Okay, random in funny years. Okay. Okay. So for this to work, however, you need to be a bit clever. You can't just arbitrarily select any hash at H1 and H2. You need to be a bit clever about this. So you need to make m prime. One way is to make m prime, and you make sure that H2 is less than m. Okay, that's what you need to make sure. And two, that hash 2 doesn't map to 0. Why shouldn't you map it to 0? What happens if you map it to 0? Then you always get 0, right? Here. That's not good. Right? That's not good. Your probe sequence always looks at the same spot. That's not optimal. So your second hash cannot map to 0. Okay. So and we talked about why already. We'll talk about why this in a second. Okay. This is one technique. All right. You choose constants a and b, and then you apply this formula a k mod b plus 1. Right. Plus 1 to avoid this problem. Where b is smaller than m. Alright, so that's the key idea. Now why might you want to do this? Now it turns out that double hashing can hit all the buckets. It can hit all the buckets, alright? Provided that hash 2 is relatively prime to m. Okay? What does it mean by relatively prime? Relatively prime, two integers are relatively prime if their greatest common divisor, GCD, you guys know what the greatest common divisor is, right? Is 1, right? You guys remember this from 1, 2, 3, 1. The larger number divides both numbers evenly, right? Okay, that's relatively prime. So again, I'll give you a quick sketch. Again, it's by contradiction, all right? So let's start off by assuming that this is not the case, that some bucket is missed. Okay, I missed some bucket. Then, for some I and j less than m, I is not equal to j. Okay, so some bucket is missed. So I'm going to equate the two parts, all right, 1m. Again, I'm going to get rid of my base address here, okay? And then I'm just going to pull this over to this side and then put I minus j, right? And then it's going to be equal to 0 mod m. But this is a problem. Again, this is a problem because since I and j are smaller than m, I minus j is not divisible by m. We know this, right? But this implies that then the hash, right, is divisible by m. Again, this cannot happen, right? This cannot happen because we said that h2 is relatively prime to m. So this is a contradiction. Both of these cannot happen simultaneously. Okay? So what's the practical impact of this? The practical impact is that you should definitely pick h2 to be relatively prime to m. Okay? To make sure that you can hit all the buckets. Okay? You hit all the buckets. Okay. So there is a con, however. The con is that of course this takes more time because you need to hash twice now. Instead of hashing once, now you have to do a second hash and then you have to hash twice. Okay, so this is a con for you. Alright, so let's look at the cost of inserts. Right, the cost of inserts. So what is the average cost of an insert under SUHA, right? The simple uniform hashing assumption, and where m equals to n. Okay, where m equals to n. Is it O m plus n? Is it O n log m? Is it O1? Is it none of the above? Or is it does not compute? So let's quickly do this. So what do you think? Do this quickly. Okay, so let's say 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Is a new hashing function. Your still hashing function. Which one is the function? Number.
Okay, so 15, 16 people have answered. Let's have a look. A lot of you have said O1. A lot of you said O1, right? Many of you said does not compute, all right? And the right answer is actually it's none of the above. Or does not compute. It's also money. Actually, it computes, but it's none of the above. Why is that? Remember, I said that initially you thought I said it's O1, right? Like under SUHA it should work. That hash tables are constant type. So why is it that this is not correct? Why is this not O1 as you expect? So the performance for open addressing, right, under downward hashing. Okay. Note that again, as I mentioned before, the cost of an insert is about the same as an unsuccessful. It's the same as an unsuccessful search because you have to look through all and then insert right at the end of your. Or it's keep looking until you find an empty bucket and then you put it there, right? So that's the cost, right? Now the cost of the insert is going to be 1 over 1 minus a alpha, where alpha is n over n. This is my load factor. Remember, 1 over 1 minus my load factor. Then n is hiding in this load factor. Okay, n is hiding in this load factor. Okay, it's not constant with respect to n. N is hiding in the load factor. All right. So let's give you a proof sketch. So what's the probability that the first bucket is empty? The probability that the first bucket is empty is quite simple. You just look at how many free slots there are, right, over the number of buckets. So the number of free slots is m minus n, right, over n. And that's going to be, let's call it p. All right, let's just give that value p, the variable p. What is the probability that the second bucket is empty if the first probe had failed? Okay, what happens if that happens? Then it's just going to be, right, m minus n over m minus 1, because we've lost one space. Right, we've lost one space, so the first person, you can't put it there. So let's look at the second one, and then we find it's empty, so we have one less space. This is going to be larger than, right, p. It's going to be larger than p, right, because it's m minus 1 in the denominator, right? Okay, so it's going to be larger than p. If you carry this on, you look at the third bucket is empty. Given that the first and second probe failed, all right, that's going to be m minus n over m minus 2. It's also going to be larger than p. Okay, and you keep going on. Now, if at every trial your success is at probability p, right, 1 minus alpha, then the expected time to your first success, your first hit, right, is 1 over p. Right, we know this already. Expected time, if your probability is 1 over p, you can repeat it until you get your first hit. That's going to be 1 over p. So it's going to be 1 over 1 minus alpha. Right, so the cost of that's going to be your cost of your insert. Right, it's upper bounded by 1 over 1 minus alpha. And again, remember that your alpha hides, in this case, your n. Okay, the n is not, this is not constant. Okay, the n is hiding inside here. Right, it's hiding in here. So you can't just assume that it's constant. So for unsuccessful search, it looks a little bit differently. For successful search, sorry, it looks a little differently. It looks like this. Okay, but we won't derive it here. So again, this is what it looks like if you were to plot it out, right? If you do linear probing, we've seen this before, right? Successor and unsuccessor, this is what it looks like. Okay. If you do SUHA, right, optimal under SUHA, you get better values than under linear probing. Double hashing comes pretty close to optimal. Okay, not there, but close. All right. So we're going to use that as a proxy. So here, 1/1 minus alpha, you can see that the growth is not too bad, but still there's some degradation once your load factor is quite high, right? Then you start having to do quite a number of probes. So say it's 3/4 slope, you have to do 4 probes or 10 probes, right? So that's not nice, right? It depends still on n. So the key problem with this is that I said here that n equals to n. That's not good. Okay, that means my load factor is what? 1. Right? That's not good. Okay. If I maintain a low load factor, let's say 0.5, okay, when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm fixing that. Actually, I'm fixing it to be a constant. I'm going to select m, right, so that what alpha becomes a constant, then it becomes O of 2, and this becomes constant, right? So what's the trick here? The trick is that I need to pick my load factor, right? If I don't arbitrarily select any load factor, then I don't get this nice performance, all right, that's promised to me by the hash table. So, I showed you 2 stuff, chaining and open addressing, 2 techniques you can apply, all right? Open addressing has better memory usage or cache performance, right? No references, you can, no dynamic memory allocation, you don't have to worry about stuff like that because in separate chaining you have to maintain your linked list, right? You don't have to do that. Linear addressing actually works quite well in practice, okay? Open addressing works quite well in practice, okay? So you can keep that in mind. Separate chaining is less sensitive to hash functions. It's also slightly less sensitive to the load factor, okay? Because open addressing really degrades past the load factor of 0.7, all right? So you have to waste some space when you're considering to do open addressing, okay? On average though, if you maintain a good hash table, you're implementing well, you pick good hash functions, then you basically guarantees average O1 properties, all right? Your guarantees O1 properties, but not quite. Okay, so what have I glossed over a little bit? What have I glossed over a little bit in the last 2 slides? All my proofs, everything that I said before depends on what? Sorry? Yes, it depends on SUHA. It depends on my simple uniform hashing assumption. So if my assumptions are not met, then all this goes out the door, right? My assumption, I always assume SUHA. If I assume SUHA is not met, then I'm not sure whether my proofs still hold. In general, SUHA doesn't work, right? It's not real, right? It doesn't exist, okay? But we can get pretty close in practice, okay? So SUHA in general tells us some properties of a good hashing function, the ideal situation, okay? So what is the ideal situation? The ideal situation is that we want a hash that is consistent. It always maps, let's say you have 2 keys, say the same key, it always maps it to the same bucket. It shouldn't be randomized, okay? You give the same key, sometimes it tells you bucket 2, the next day it gives you bucket 3, right? That's not good, okay? You won't be able to find what you're looking for. So you want it to be consistent. 2, it should be fast to compute. If it's not fast to compute, then all the time, the bounds that I derived before, they don't apply anymore. So they should be fast to compute, hopefully on the order of 1, okay? So constant time. The last one, perhaps the most important, is that it should scatter the keys into different buckets as uniformly as possible. So if I have, all the keys going to one bucket, that's bad, right? If I have it going to, let's say, 2 buckets, it's bad. I have to get it so that all the keys map as uniformly as possible to all possible buckets. All right, so that's what I want for my hashing functions. And so tomorrow, we're going to look at designing hashing functions in order to get these good properties. Okay, so that's tomorrow. Okay, so today you learned about the symbol table 18, you know about the hash table, you can analyze its performance, and you know about chaining and open addressing. Okay? So if any questions, I'll be down here. Alright? So see you tomorrow for how to design the hash functions.